In this visit to the shed, we're going to be upgrading this to this. So we're performing a drivetrain upgrade here. We had a venerable old 9-speed setup which was very time worn and very dependable, but starting to show its age a little, so it's time to upgrade. We've already discussed in a previous video why we're upgrading to what we are, but we're going with an 11-speed SLX. With the SLX mech, you get an awful lot of componentry and tech for your money, and with the 11-speed finish, this always reminded me of an old 9-speed XTR. The finish I felt had a similar kind of aesthetic, and I always put me in mind of this old mech, which I have a lot of time for. So SLX it is. You'll see we've already jumped in and stripped everything down, so we're now sans any form of drivetrain. So let's look about how we then fit the new drivetrain and progress from there. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fit the cassette and get the back wheel in before offering up the mech and the shifter, and then dealing with the cabling and indexing last. So with that in mind, let's cut to the back wheel. So taking the cassette off is a pretty straightforward task. The cassette attaches to a free hub body, and there is a single lock ring acting essentially as a bolt holding it on. It's indexed, so you can only get it on one way, so there's basically no way to get this job wrong. But to unlock that, it's going to want to turn, which is why we need specialist tools such as a chain whip and a cassette lock ring tool to actually access that bolt itself. Basically, if you've got 8 through 10 and 11 speed in a lot of cases, then this is going to work for your cassette. SRAM has its own XD driver setup, which is fractionally different, but the basic principle is exactly the same, just the tools will be slightly different, but you'll still need a chain whip of some kind to stop this from rotating. I'm going to start by locking my chain whip around the cassette so that I can anchor it down and then prevent it turning. If I'm working with a cassette lock ring tool, I'll place that into the lock ring and then using the spanner wrench down until it breaks. If I'm using a posh tool, the process is exactly the same. And once that lock ring is out, we can simply lift the entire thing off the free hub body. This is usually a pretty good time to inspect for wear. Check your bearings, make sure they're still turning smoothly, and if all's good, thoroughly clean and degrease down so that when you're fitting your new cassette, you've got a kind of a nice clean surface to mount it against. Now you'll notice the splines on the free hub there. They're a pattern so that there's only one way to fit the cassette. Some are wider and some are narrower, but you will find a particularly narrow one, and then when you find the narrow index notch on the cassette, match the two up, slide the cassette home. So easy a road rider could do it. I'm just going to apply a little bit of copper grease. I like to use copper grease when I'm mounting index components, but that's just me. Regular grease will work fine. You'll notice I'm mostly just putting it at this end. That's because when I mount the cassette, it's going to push that grease back, and if I put too much grease down here, it's just going to ooze out the back and track mud and grit. A little tiny smidge of grease is usually all you really need. I can sense someone in the comments tell me that this is the wrong grease and too much, so, you know, put it in the bottom third of the internet and we can argue about it there. So the next thing to do is to match the cassette to the free hub. Cassettes usually come in spiders or parts. They very rarely come as a single piece. So I can just slide that on and just build it up, ensuring I get it in the correct order. Some cassettes will come with spacers that you have to put between the cogs. This ensures that there's the correct gap for the chain size, so make sure you do not miss these if they come separately. Some cassettes come pinned, so these will already be pre-made in. It'll depend on the brand or make or model that you're working with. But if you get a bunch of these in the box, check these instructions, make sure you don't miss them. Something to note about the sprockets themselves is they're not symmetrical. They've got what are referred to as shifting ramps that help the chain move up and down the cassette. So if they're the wrong way around, this isn't going to help shifting. This again is where the indexing will come in to rescue you, as you won't be able to fit it in any orientation if the sprocket is the wrong way around. So that will help. Usually to help you if you're not sure, the shifting ramps face out and there'll be stamped numbers telling you how many teeth are on the sprocket. They are also obviously pointing out so you can read them, just in case you get mixed up. The last thing to do is get the lock ring itself, put it down, and we don't need any specialist tool apart from the lock ring tool at this stage, as to turn this right. Because we're going to want to turn the cassette in a way that's going to lock anyway, so we don't need anything to hold it still. And we basically just crank that, and you hear it click. Basically take them as many as you feel brave. When it doesn't want to give you any more, your cassette is fitted. Job done. Usually cassette, it's a consumable component. You're going to go through these depending on your mileage and the conditions and how well you take care of it. Periodically you're going to have to change these. Generally, keeping on top of the chain, replacing the chain more regularly will allow you to get more cassettes life out of your... Generally speaking, changing the chain and keeping on top of chain wear will help prevent unnecessary wear and extend the life of your cassette. Keeping your cassette clean will also do that. A well-oiled, clean, looked after cassette is going to get a couple thousand kilometers easily, but again, that entirely depends on the type of riding you do, how much stress and strain you put under it in bad conditions. A mountain bike cassette is probably not going to live as long as a road one, for example. But this guy is on, so if that's what you're doing, job done, get it back in the bike. But in this case, the cassette's on. Now we're going to get that in, offer up the mech, and then we can start to think about shifting, cabling, and then indexing. So, on to the next thing.